Guys, this is interesting. I found this post on Facebook where a contractor performed a repairability assessment method established by the National Academy of Forensic Engineers, the same method that we teach at the Building Experts Institute. The only standardized method to determine if an asphalt shingle roof is or isn't repairable, by the way. And they used that and sent it in, and then an engineer was sent out to evaluate whether or not the roof was repairable. The engineer used a painter's putty knife that was fairly wide and was causing mat transfer when trying to separate the seals. So then he went to a thinner putty knife and still caused mat transfer separating the seals. Documented that there was a lot of damage like that, and then resealed the shingles back down, and then still concluded beyond all reasonability that the roof was still in a repairable condition. And then he writes in his report, this is a Niederveld engineer's report, by the way, Mr. James, contractor, referenced an article, Repairability Assessment Method for Evaluating Asphalt Composition Shingle Roof Repairs by Chad Williams from the National Academy of Forensic Engineers. This document was reviewed during the development of this report. This paper offers an alternative approach for determining the repairability of a roof and is not authoritative in nature. It's the only standardized method that exists, and it was peer-reviewed and published by the National Academy of Forensic Engineers. I'm not so sure how it couldn't be authoritative. What other way could you determine if a roof is or isn't repairable if you're not going to use the only standardized method? The proposed methodology includes a destructive examination requiring the complete removal and replacement of a shingle while evaluating the surrounding 8 shingles that may be affected. That sounds extremely reasonable, doesn't it? This proposed methodology includes visually matching, physical matching, manufacturing defects, installation errors, and prior repairs as factors used to determine overall repairability of the slope, which do not specifically affect the ability to physically repair damaged shingles and return a roof to pre-event condition. That's not true. That's not true at all. There is a portion of the scorecard that has you evaluate the conditions of the roof. And part of that does have you evaluate visual matching conditions for states where matching is a concern. And for states where it isn't concerned, you don't even bother with that. The previous repairs, we're talking about a history of previous repairs. There's so many repairs, it doesn't make sense to repair the roof anymore. Installation issues that cause problems during repairability are the ones that we're talking about. These are literal repairability concerns. It makes no sense to make repairs if it's this, or this is part of the condition of the property that makes it harder to make repairs. And that is part of the scorecard. It's in there. So he used or evaluated what the contractor used this report to determine. Okay, so in the conclusion section, the engineer then goes on to say, based on our investigation, it is our opinion that individual shingle replacement is a viable repair option to return the roof of the subject structure to pre-event condition. Shingles on the subject roof were able to be unsealed, lifted to reveal the fastener securing the shingle, and resealed without tearing or creasing the base laminate of the shingle. Yet there was mat transfer that was caused. A significant amount of mat transfer that was caused. If you are causing mat transfer, you are tearing a chunk of shingle off of another shingle because the sealant isn't separating cleanly. That causes damage to 2 shingles every single time. What are you going to do about that? If the engineer that is sent out is trying to say that mat transfer isn't damage to the shingles, you could simply ask the engineer, is that distinct, demonstrable, and detrimental in any way to that shingle? Have you physically affected that shingle permanently in any way? If you bought a shingle that had that kind of a feature on it, where it had a chunk of it missing, would you think that that shingle is defective or damaged? Or would you say, no, it's in perfect condition? Of course it's damaged. The Repairability Assessment Method for evaluating asphalt composition shingle roof repairs identified the displacement or stripping of granules and binder as damage. That's the sealant. And mat transfer is how he's describing it. He's just describing it in a weird way. There's no reference for where this determination of damage comes from. It comes from the idea of what would be considered damage if it was caused by wind. If wind causes mat transfer, you would say that it's wind damage, wouldn't you? Therefore, it's damage. The displacement or stripping of granules and binder is caused by the bond at the self-sealing adhesive strip exceeding the bond strength of the binder to the fiberglass reinforcing mat or granules. This condition may prevent the affected shingle from rebonding and commonly occurs when unsealing shingles by hand. The NRCA Repair Manual for asphalt shingle roof systems requires shingles to be hand sealed where any seals were broken during the repair and where existing shingles extend over new shingles. Breaking the seals means breaking the seals cleanly, not removing binder all the way down to the fiberglass mat on a shingle. The use of hot air was not performed in the time of a site visit and may prevent the displacement or stripping of granules and binder. So you didn't do a good job, and now you're trying to say, well, maybe if I had done a better job by using some kind of a heat application, it might have worked out fine. Look, I'm not thrilled with your report. This is honestly trying to get to a result. And it's really clear that you're trying to get to a result of saying that this is repairable. You caused physical damage to the shingle when you try to separate the seals. And you're saying that maybe if you had done it differently, it would be fine. And you're probably saying something like, if a qualified contractor did it, they'd be able to separate the seals cleanly. If you are having a piece of one shingle rip off and stay stuck to another shingle when separating the seals, then you're causing damage. I don't know how else you would say that. Can you legitimately say that that's not damaged? Because that's what you're trying to say in this report. No bueno. If you found mat transfer on a shingle that was caused by wind, you would call it wind damage. Donan calls it wind damage. They have it in their paper, their technical paper, the third one, about wind damage on asphalt shingles. They call it delamination in their paper, but it's described the same way that you're describing this. And if there is delamination, then they're saying that the idea that it was caused by wind cannot be refuted. That is damage. It is clearly damage. You are taking a chunk of shingle off. I'm going to let this dead horse lie. If you actually think that that's not damage, put that in the commentary. If you agree with this engineer, I want to know about it. I'd really like to see what everybody is thinking on this, because it just seems so ridiculous for an engineer to say that something hasn't been damaged when it goes all the way down to the fiberglass, when you remove the binder from a shingle. Come on. What is damage to you? Does the policy think that's damage? Yeah, it does, because it's a physical alteration that is detrimental to the shingle, and it's not pre-loss condition. This is crazy. I'm going to go one step further before I end this video. I know it's going long. The International Existing Building Code, when you're making repairs, you cannot perform repairs that leave the property in less performance value than it was prior to the repairs. If you are taking chunks of shingle off, you are reducing the wind resistance of that shingle. You're reducing the water shedding capability of that shingle. Its performance value has been changed. You cannot make repairs that leave the property in worse condition than it was prior to the repairs being undertaken. That is code requirements. Shingle manufacturers would not be okay with you leaving mat transfer behind to the same extent that you did.